Hello and welcome back to How to Homeschool in High School, the podcast focused on encouraging and equipping you to homeschool through high school, hosted by a high school homeschooler. My name is Nadine Laffer, and on today's episode, number 48, we are talking with Sindhu, a Bridgeway Academy student who is homeschooling in France. All right. So welcome to episode number 48 of How to Homeschool in High School. It's almost 50 episodes. I am so excited for the next few weeks. Today we're talking with Sindhu, and Sindhu it's actually a really cool story of how I met her. I first got in contact with Bridgeway Academy through Great Homeschool Conventions. They came up to me and were starting talking about the podcast and the mission, and they were like, hey, can we send you some students that are part of our program, our online program, and you can talk with them about just online school in general, but also Bridgeway. So that is exactly what's going to happen today. And though we're going to talk a lot about Bridgeway Academy, we're also going to talk about the challenges that we face and the blessings that we experience through online schooling, because the more I talk with homeschoolers, the more I realize online schooling is becoming increasingly more popular just because of the amazing resources we have available to us and just the great teachers we have access to through these online schools. So it's becoming more popular. I think it's time we start addressing some of the challenges and how to overcome them, but also the big blessings we receive. And Sindhu definitely has a unique perspective on homeschooling, as she is homeschooling in a different country, and also just her own experiences and her own, opinion on homeschooling, which is, we're going to go deeply into that, and also just her story in general, which was so wonderful to hear from her. So without further ado, let's dive into it. So welcome to the podcast, Sindhu. Thank you so much for being with us today. So I wanted to start out, obviously I started with homeschooling questions and everything, but you are the first person I've interviewed or talked to on the podcast that is outside of the United States of America, which I just think is so cool. So you're in France, right?
Yes, I live in France, and I've lived here for almost 6 years.
Wow.
Which I think it's really long now that I think of it.
Yeah, I mean, we've been in Pennsylvania. I mean, we just moved here to Pennsylvania I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, oh, it was like 4 years ago. And then I realized, no, it was 6 years ago. Like, that's a decent amount of time.
I know, right? I think back and I'm like, okay, I came here when I was in fifth grade.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm almost in 11th grade. That's way too many years.
Yeah, that's a long time. So what made you guys move out there?
My dad's work did.
Okay.
So he wanted to get into a bigger project, and we moved here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. He's been in that project for almost 6 years now, and I hope he continues to be, because I don't want to go out of France anymore.
So you like it there then?
Yeah, but I would say mostly because of my school.
Mm.
Because if I were to move somewhere else, the time zones get messed up again.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it works the best for me when I'm in France. And if I were to go back to my native, there's 6 hours difference. And
yeah,
I always end up attending my live classes at midnight.
Oh, that sounds so awful.
So it's best for me to stay here until I finish my high school. Cool.
Yeah, that makes sense. I did a few online courses last year, and there was one girl from Africa, I think, and everyone else, it was on at 9 a.m. for us in America, and then she was on at 10 p.m. her time, and I'm like, how in the world are you doing physics at 10 p.m.? I could never, ever. I am in awe of you.
Yeah, physics at 10 p.m. I really don't understand how it would work. My brain would be dead.
Yeah, that same. So I guess we could start out by talking about your school. So why did you guys start homeschooling? You started homeschooling actually the same year that we did. I was in 5th grade.
Yeah.
So how did that begin?
So my dad first came to France before he could bring us all in, so that he could see the place around, get the house, and I don't know, set it up for us before we get here. Yeah. And then since we were moving to France, English is not very common here. And he's been keeping homeschooling as an option for quite a while now, but he only kept that as an option. And then after he came back from France, he was like, you're being homeschooled. It's no longer an option. because there
Mhm.
was no English schools here, and the only one, it's called a bilingual school, but it's not actually a bilingual school. The only thing they do is that they take a course called English, and that do twice a week, and they call it a bilingual school, and it's super expensive. It's like 12,000 euros per year. And he was like, nope, you're getting homeschooled.
Yeah, I understand. Where were you guys before?
We were in India before.
Wow. So that's where you kind of grew up too?
Yeah, I did not move at all. I was
Mm.
in a city called Chennai for 9 years until I made like a big, big move across continents.
Yeah, I can't imagine. That's crazy. Well, I guess I did, but I was only 5 years old, so I don't have quite the understanding of like a nine. You were 9 then?
Yeah, I was 9 years
Yeah.
old.
So that must have been crazy. Was it hard for you like what were you doing like school-wise before you started homeschooling?
I went to like this physical school, and it was actually kind of a strict school because every single school back in India is kind of strict. Adapting into the homeschooling was kind of hard because it's not just the way I used to do it. And to me, on my first year, I had to take US history, and I had no idea about anything that happened in the US. And I'm like, I can't understand half of this. How does this work?
I
So yeah,
can't.
the first year was hard, but
Yeah.
I grew into it.
So when you guys did move, did you start Bridgeway then, or was it later on?
I've been in Bridgeway since the beginning, and I
Okay,
haven't moved. I did switch a lot of curriculums, but it's just the same school.
gotcha. All right. So could you explain a bit about Bridgeway? Because I actually don't know much about the actual organization.
Yeah, it's kind of like a very big organization.
Hmm.
Like they are in partnership with private schools, charter
Wow.
schools, and they also have international schools all over the world. But I'm just in the basic homeschooling part.
Okay.
Almost like 47,000 students from all over the world.
Wow.
But I don't meet all of them, so just a few.
Yeah, yeah. So how did you guys find that?
So my dad, like, he did a lot of research with homeschooling, and then he found like 4 to 5 options. And within those options, he wanted to pick out the top ones. And then Bridgeway was one of the top. And he reached out to Bridgeway, and then we got assigned, like, we got an advisor who would like tell us all about homeschooling and would be there until I uh almost finished high school. And she kind of gave us an overview on how homeschooling would work and what I would have to do and stuff like that. And my dad was impressed with the school. He was like, okay, this sounds pretty good. And I still remember taking the test to get into the school.
Oh, that sounds stressful.
Yeah, it's called a performance testing exam. And I was super nervous. And the questions weren't even that hard. It was just me. I was like, what if I don't pass this exam? Would I not get into a school? But
Well,
yeah, I ended up getting into it.
yeah. Wow, so you have to take a test to get in to the school. Is it just to like see where you are?
Yeah, it's just to see where I am, but I
Hmm.
kind of felt like I was gonna decide if I get into the school.
Yeah, yeah. And you're also, you're young, so I mean those things that when you're young are also a big deal too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I still remember thinking that homeschooling meant a teacher would like fly into my house every single day and would teach
Oh,
me everything
that
and would go back. But after like a few weeks before my actual course started, I realized my mom was gonna be my teacher. That kind of shattered my expectations,
wow.
but
Yeah, I love that idea of homeschooling. You know what? I honestly, before we started, I don't remember exactly what I thought about homeschooling. I didn't really understand it though. So that's interesting. What you thought. I think I also thought it was like, well, I thought homeschoolers were weird, first of all, and then I didn't really want to do it. And the idea of my mom teaching me was like, what? That's so weird. I don't know. Like, that's just not
Yeah,
normal.
it's kind of weird to think of your mom as your teacher.
Yeah, definitely took me a while to get used to that.
Yeah, my mom was only my teacher for a year
Okay.
because I have a little sister who was barely 1 year old when I did that. So my mom also had to take care of her, teach me stuff, and do all the chores around the house. So it was kind of getting a little hard for the both of us. And then I switched from textbook to the self-paced online course where I watch like pre-recorded videos and then I do my work.
So is that how you've done high school as well so far?
No, I switched to live classes at
Oh,
ninth grade
okay.
because the pre-recorded videos started to I couldn't get hang of them anymore. And it didn't really work for me as I'm just gonna be sitting in front of the computer and watch like hours and hours of pre-recorded videos. And that kind of didn't feel like I was getting a proper school experience. My parents were like, we reached out to another advisor because when you hit high school, you get a new advisor who would help you through high school. And then our advisor suggested that since I was not like very happy with my self-paced course, she suggested that I could try a few live classes. So my dad wanted to test that out. So I took math and science to start. And then I was super surprised with how like it turned out. After like 4 years, I had an actual teacher and actual classmates, and it felt like I was in a school environment, if that
Mm,
makes sense.
yeah. Yeah. So I think self-paced is a good thing to talk about for a second because I did a self-paced course for chemistry and I've done them for math pretty much my entire, well, at least early on in my high school. It's like my sophomore year, I think. And I have found um, them to be very interesting, very different than a live course for
Yeah,
sure. But
yeah,
it does allow you to have a lot more. I don't know if you experience this a lot more flexibility in like when you actually take the class because at
yeah,
when
that's
it's
true.
live, you have a time. But it does. I mean, especially I don't know how many times you have them a week. I had just once a week, so that wasn't too bad. But the self you can't like ask a question in real time, which is kind of annoying sometimes if you have a question.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's too because I live in a completely different time zone. If I
Mm,
were to email my teacher,
yeah.
she or he would get back to me almost like 24 hours later. And I still remember struggling with one assignment particularly, and I didn't understand what that assignment wanted me to do. And I waited for almost 3 days for the teacher to reply. And yeah, that was actually a not so fun experience because you can't really move forward without completing that assignment. So I was kind of like getting backlogged. Yeah, on self-paced, it's super easy to fall behind. Like if I get sick one day and I have to take like a few days off, I would like get a lot of backlog. So that though it gives me the flexibility, it also doesn't give me the flexibility, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. I can't
Yeah.
take breaks if I want to.
Yeah. I get what you're saying for sure. It does sometimes whenever I do get a sidetrack, then all of a sudden I'm a week behind in my work and I don't know how that happened and now I have to fix it and that makes it more stressful. So you liked live classes better. Could you tell us like a few, like if students listening and he or she's like thinking about doing a live class, can you tell us a bit about why you like them so much better?
It's because of the like hands-on experience I get with a live class. I get to have my own teacher. I get to like learn with a bunch of classmates and stuff. So for example, I was in my English class and we were reading an essay and I understood it in a certain way. And our teacher put us in breakout rooms so that we could share our thoughts. And then a few of my classmates, they shared their view of the essay, and it really gave me a whole lot of perspectives of just that essay. And I felt that was really cool because I couldn't have thought of that essay in that particular way. And it was kind of exciting that I could get a whole lot of perspectives on just one thing that kind of seems super normal to me, but to them, it might sound more exciting or less exciting. So that was really fun. And you get amazing teachers in homeschooling no matter what. Let it be any course. It may be the hardest kind of physics or hardest kind of chemistry. You're gonna have the best teachers in the world. I
Mm,
would say you take live classes just for the teachers. They're amazing.
that's wonderful. Yeah. I love that you talked about getting out of, seeing a different perspective than yourself. So that's the same thing as me. I'll be, and I think whenever you're doing like a self-paced course or a book course, you're pretty much in your own head, or you have your mom's opinion or you have your sibling's opinion. But besides that,
Yeah.
it's just that. It's that extent. And then, but there's so many different takes on, like, especially literature, something like that. Like math's pretty objective, but in and of itself, like literature, you can just interpret it in so many different ways. And it's so fun to talk about it with people. I think, like, I was just reading a
Yeah.
book the other day and I'm like, I want a book club to talk about this book because there's so much I want to discuss, but no one else I know is reading it at the time. So there's little things like that. I do like that you pointed that out about, and you get that from a live, like a online classroom, which it's different from being in person, obviously, but you still
Yeah.
get that for sure.
Yeah, that's probably because all of the teachers they want to create a like it's kind of like an actual classroom kind of
Hmm.
an environment. My teachers like they really try to create that kind of environment so that it's not different from it.
Yeah. I find also, which I don't know if you are more like bent, I'm more introverted. So being on a live
Yeah.
class for me was actually really hard. I hardly talked, like getting myself to talk was a huge thing. And I remember, I think I told my professor I had a podcast at one point. I'm like, he's not going to believe me because I don't say two words in my class. Like, how can I talk for a podcast? Anyway, so that was really hard for me. I struggled with the environment of online classes. It doesn't sound like you do. Is that
Actually, I also am an introvert, and
okay?
that was hard for me as well. The first few classes was kind of hard because I was constantly nervous that what if I say something wrong? And that too, on the first year of live class, I had to take math and science. So what if I say something wrong? And what if, like, if I were to have an opinion, what if others don't agree with me? That would just be embarrassing. So I almost like never spoke at all. And then after a few weeks or so, the teachers were actually like starting to get super kind with everyone. I mean, they were kind of the beginning as well, but at like the mid of the semester, like to get everyone to open up and it just not being a class where only the teacher talks so that it doesn't feel like another recorded video again. The teacher also wanted us to talk. And sometimes it ended in a bad situation where the teacher regrets asking that because everyone starts getting so talkative that it goes outside like the classroom. The teacher has to like forcefully mute everyone in the class so that they can stay silent. So yeah, for me it was kind of hard fitting into live classes, but once I did, I never want to go back
Mm.
to self-paced again.
Yeah. So, would your advice be to anyone who struggles like the way that I did, at least, um, to keep going and to just continue to push yourself outside your comfort zone? Is that kind of what you did?
Yeah, that's what I did.
Mm.
It's just that you all want to have fun while learning. That's the whole point of you getting homeschooled. You just don't run in tight schedules like you do in physical schools. You get to have time for yourself and you have fun while learning. So yeah, just give it some time. That's what I did. And then I had like very supportive teachers, which is also another reason why like I got out of my comfort zone pretty easily, but I wouldn't say I'm very talkative even now. I only answer when I'm called out, and I only talk out loud when it's just teacher
Mm,
and I in the whole call.
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think looking back at my experience, I had a very extroverted class. Like they were all very excited to be there and they were in the chat like constantly talking about random stuff. And so I just didn't see myself in that crowd. I'm like, I'm not really that. So that's why I think I was more silent than I usually am. But also, I think looking back at myself, I'm like, I should have been less scared of being wrong. I think it was a physics class, it was, a science class or a math class. It's very hard to, you're afraid. You're like, I don't know if I did that problem right. And I have to say a number out loud and it's either right or wrong. Like
Yeah.
there's no middle ground. And I was like, I should have not taken my goodness, my grammar, taken myself too seriously because no one really cares. Like the teacher was there to help me and failing is probably the best way for me to get better because then he can explain
Yeah,
where I went wrong instead of me just sitting at home with my wrong problem and not knowing what I did. So
exactly.
I wish I would have not taken myself as seriously as I did during that whole class.
Okay, yeah, now that this experience is getting very, very relatable, knowing that you also went through the exact same thing I did. Because even like last semester in chemistry, my teacher always made jokes about how I have like a bunch of question marks before behind my answer because I'm so unsure if I
Yeah.
did it right.
Hmm.
And he always jokes about how there's like a question mark storm with every one of my answers.
Yeah, I used to write well, at least I took a science class last semester too, and I would write question marks, and my teacher would comment on like you weren't sure about that one. I'm like, no, I wasn't unsure enough to put like a question mark or two somewhere. I think I do it just to show them like I understand this might be wrong. I just don't know why.
Yeah, and sometimes if it does end up being wrong, you could just say that I was like debating whether
Exactly.
if that was the answer or not.
So
So,
the question mark's there to prove it. I was
yeah,
thinking about it.
hence proved the question mark was there.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I love when I find that we like people I'm talking to have similar experiences than I do, and I'm guessing it's a lot of people experience that kind of. I don't know how to manage the environment of a live class because it is very interesting. I mean, everyone had to do it during COVID, but it's a very interesting dynamic. It's different than an in-person class, but it's different than a self-paced course. It's like somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So you definitely have to get used to it. But it can be really fun. And like you said, the teachers that you get access to. I mean, seriously, you could have access to like the best teachers and in every single subject, which is something
Yeah.
underrated, I think, about homeschooling because it's just so cool.
I always talk about it when someone like I'm not even exaggerating when I say this. Every single person I've ever met, when they find out that I'm homeschooled, they're like, how does it work for you? And I'm like, I just have the best teachers. I always brag about my teachers when someone asks me how homeschooling works for me, because they're also one of the biggest reason why I'm still taking homeschooling as my educational uh uh I don't know how to put the words. As I'm still continuing homeschooling as my education because of the teachers. They're not like they don't overwhelm you, but at the same time, they don't make you like super confident. You could just be like yourself with
Mm,
them.
that's pretty cool. Like I said, I don't know very much about Bridgeway, but from what you're telling me about them, I think it's definitely something to definitely look into because so explain to me, so do you get to choose the classes you take every semester? Do they give you like a big list of all of them? Is that how it works?
For electives, yeah, they do. They give me a whole bunch of options, but when it comes to like the core subjects like math, science, and English, you just kind of go in the order that you like, for example, at the end of eighth grade, let's say you finished pre-algebra. So from then you would take algebra one in ninth grade and then geometry in 10th grade. So it goes in order. For science, it kind of you can change if you want to, but the advisor chooses it for me. So yeah, I've never really wanted to change before. So yeah, it's kind of just the way my advisor goes on with my list. But the electives are like their never-ending list.
That's so cool. I think having an advisor is probably very useful. I think it probably
Yeah,
alleviates some of the stress on at least the parents, or just knowing that someone else is like kind of guiding where you should go. Is that your experience?
yeah, yeah. That's really super helpful because, like I said, I come from a completely different country. I don't know how like the American curriculum works. So having an advisor like pick out my course for me, like telling me what's best, and that's really, really helpful coming from a completely different country and having a completely different understanding of how school
Mm.
works. That's really helpful.
So, just on that topic, because I just think this is so interesting. How does like this school you knew, and then because I'm Bridgeway's based in the U.S. Is that right?
It is.
Okay. So, how has that like the structure wise been? Um, is there anything you've noticed that is really different?
It is. The way the courses are set up is really different. I only did my school until like in a physical school, I only did it until fourth grade. And only after fifth grade is where the curriculum that I took in my school was going to get harder. So until then, the way the course was set up is that you write classworks. Is that whatever happens in class, you copy it down for each subject. And then you have exams based on what you wrote in the classwork. And then that was really different from the homeschooling curriculum that I took. I took textbook and I read a whole unit and then I don't know what the questions are. It could be from anywhere of the unit that I just learned, which is different from the exams that I used to take back in my school. Is I knew what questions would come, but it's just that I have to study hard to understand how
Mm.
I could answer them. But that was kind of different. But
Yeah.
I guess I got used to it now.
Yeah. Wow, that is really cool. So, in your opinion, which one's better? Do you know? Like for learning purposes.
For learning, I would say the one that I do in homeschooling right now is
Hmm.
better because the questions are like they're random. You don't know what question's gonna be on there. The
Mm.
same as the exams in my physical school. You don't really know what questions would come, but you know the questions that you learned
Mm.
were the only ones that would be there.
Gotcha. Wow. That is so, I hardly like I only know the way we do school in the US, but I have no idea like how schools work across the world. So that's really interesting.
And it was also hard too because I had to completely switch my way of learning.
Wow. And so has Bridgeway like your class times with the time difference, has that been a huge problem for you like figuring out how to do that?
It hasn't been a problem. Well, if I'm only going to be here in France, it hasn't been a problem at all because I would say it only gives me extra time to get things done because the classes are at like early evenings, like it's at 4 to 5:30 p.m. my time. And for each course, we meet once a week, and then we have 1 week to get all the work done, and then we meet again the other week. Yeah, the time kind of does stop me from doing a few things. Like our school conducts a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
Like some of them are like
Oh.
super midnight my time.
Would they be like study group meetings sort of thing?
Not exactly study group. We have this meetups to
Mm.
socialize, if that
Oh.
makes sense.
Yeah.
For middle school and high school, there's a meetup to socialize, and then we have virtual field trips.
Oh,
I've
that's cool.
attended a few of them, and every single time you get into a virtual field trip, it's a different country or maybe a different continent,
Oh.
and how things would work in that country or that certain place.
That is so cool. So is it a live thing, or is it like a video of sorts?
It's kind of a live thing. I think they prepare everything beforehand. I still remember my memory about South Korea, or maybe it was Japan, I'm not sure. And the the person who was willing to do it for my school was living there in either Japan or South Korea, and he explained everything to us super clearly with visuals and small videos of him doing it as well. So that was really cool. And we once had a virtual field trip of how it feels like to be like on your way to the moon.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it was like a NASA field trip, I
Yeah,
think. And we were told how you eat there, how you live
yeah.
there, and stuff like that. That was also really cool.
Wow, that one sounds really, that's something that I would want to do. That's so cool. I mean, how many field trips can you do that with? And that's pretty neat.
That too, it's virtual. You really don't have to go anywhere. You're just going to be
Yeah.
sitting in your study room and they take you there without taking you there.
Yeah, you were going to the moon without going to the moon.
Yeah.
It's so cool. Um, so I guess that's a good bridge into something else I wanted to talk with you about. So I had written, I know on my question sheet I sent you about the trade-off we experience between like the normal school experience and then the homeschooling experience. So my question to you is, outside of Bridgeway, do you have a community that you've built around you, like in France, that you hang out with your friends or whatever? How does that work for you guys?
So for me, I haven't really socialized much in France
Mm,
because one of the biggest things is that I don't speak French that
that makes
fluently.
sense. Yeah.
And to make it worse, the city I live in has the hardest accent ever.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't
So,
help.
and also the in France, you don't look people here don't really have a lot of exposure to homeschooling.
Mm,
So when I say I'm homeschooled, they just look at me weirdly. And that's kind of funny. I
yeah.
did went to like a sports club to like
Mm.
socialize and to keep my physical health intact. I went there and I still remember everyone being so confused when I told them that I went to an American school and they were like, I thought you said you lived here. How do you fly back and forth to America and France? And I said I homeschooled, meaning that I study from my home. And the first thing they said was, but you don't have to wake up early at all. Like us, we have to wake up early in the morning and we have to go to school. It's kind of funny how they think how homeschooling works. It's actually super hilarious because my coach he told me that I don't know, it was just super funny to hear him say that. There was this young person, he was probably like 9 years old or something like that. He was asking me which school I went to because like it's a neighborhood sports club. So he just wanted to know what school I went to, and I told him that I'm homeschooled, and obviously he doesn't understand it because there's no exposure to homeschooling here. And I could understand them talking in French. I can understand it very clearly, but I just don't speak it. The coach said that homeschooling is really easy because you can copy out of the internet, which was really, really funny to see that people view homeschooling like that.
Yeah. Yeah, the views, the different views of homeschooling, especially people who aren't necessarily familiar with it. It's very interesting to hear their takes on it.
Yeah, sometimes it's considered rude, but his reaction when he was saying that just looked super hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw it's you kind of have to take it like that. You kind of have to take it as, oh, okay, they just don't understand. It's kind of funny, not like a personal
Yeah,
attack against homeschooling because they
yeah.
generally don't understand sometimes. And it's just not the norm right now. And it's home is with oh my goodness, my words, sorry. Is it hard for you was it hard for you to like, I don't know, legally homeschool there, or did they have homeschool like laws that allow you to homeschool in France?
It isn't legal here, but it's
Okay.
just not common.
Okay. Yeah.
like people here just want to send their kids to a public school so that
Okay.
they can have the experience,
Hmm.
and that's pretty much it. We do have like a very tiny homeschooling community here,
Mm.
but it's I've never really tried out to be a part of that
Mm.
community.
So I'm guessing, so it sounds like most of your friends you get through Bridgeway and your kind of experience there. Is that kind of what?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty much the case. I have friends pretty much all over the world.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool to say that. And when people ask me how my social life is being homeschooled, I
Yeah.
can be such a cool kid and say, I have friends all over the world. There's
Hmm.
one in UK, there's one in the United States, there's one in Africa, there's one in Europe, there's one everywhere.
Yeah. That is pretty amazing. And on that note about people being concerned, I think it's so funny how concerned they are about our social lives. Like it's a
Yeah.
genuine concern for people. I was just talking to my aunt the other day and she was like, "Yeah, I was talking to someone about you being homeschooled." And they're like, "I just don't they just need to make friends. They need to have friends. Like what about their friendships?" I'm like they're so genuinely concerned about us, but it's like it's kind of weird too at the same time. That's the thing that everyone talks about.
Yeah, the funny thing is, my social life, comparing it to my physical school and being homeschooled,
Mhm.
my social life has only gotten better.
Mm.
Like I've made so many friends. I used to be super silent in my school, like in my physical school. Like every teacher would complain that the student is talking way too much when there's like a parent teachers meeting. And to my mom, the teacher complains that I don't talk at all. And when one of my teacher found out that I was moving to France shortly, she was like, "Are you sure about this decision? Because your daughter doesn't talk at all. She's super silent, and you're just taking her to a completely different place where she doesn't know the language. It's got to be super hard." But I kind of feel like Bridgeway has made it like 1,000 times easier for me to find my circle with people who shares this kind of the same experiences as
Mm.
me.
I can see that for sure because it's they're all from all over the world. So, you know, that does you probably have similar like time zone things and I don't know. It's just kind of a group of people that are just like you. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, what was the flip that switch, do you think, that made you go from being more shy to being, I guess, less shy is what I know there's a better word for that. More extra, I guess more extroverted.
So the first thing was during COVID, my dad got this email from my school saying that they're gonna like have this meetup at every end of the week, every for like 3 times a month or something like that. So my dad said that that was like the perfect opportunity for me to like socialize because the first almost 3 years of being homeschooled, I had no friends at all because I was in like self-paced and textbook, and there was no way that I could meet other people. So with through that meetups, that's where I was extremely scared to even put my camera on because that's like my first time I could I don't know, have a conversation with people my age after a very long time. Yeah, that's what kind of started me to like socialize through homeschooling. And after that, I started attending all of the meetups. And before any of the students, the advisors who hosted it became my friends. Which is funny because every single time, either the teacher or the advisor, they turn out to be my friend first before I could try and socialize with the other kids. Now almost every one of them who went to the meetup with me are my friends, so that's kind of cool. I've stepped out of my comfort zone, and yeah, that's how I started making friends.
Hmm. Yeah. So I think the main takeaway from that whole experience is just to do it, right? To get outside of your
Yeah.
comfort zone. That's good piece of advice for homeschoolers in general because we can sometimes go through I know when I moved up here, I mean, this is very different from moving to a different country entirely, but we moved from two different states, and I had to start over. And we were in a very rural area of Pennsylvania, so there's not like a homeschool group very close to us. So we were kind
Yeah.
of isolated. And the thing that got us starting making our community was my mom taking us to social events, kind of similar to your like going on the live meeting,
Yeah.
like those first initial, they're kind of painful, they're kind of hard. They're like, oh, like I don't want to do this. And then all of a sudden, the more you do it, the easier it gets. And then all of a sudden you start
Yeah.
making friendships, which are so rewarding for your effort you're putting in.
Yeah, they are. At first, it was kind of hard to like make a conversation with them,
Yeah.
but then we would pay like I can't talk today. We would play Kahoot or
Oh,
Blocket
yeah.
in those meetups, and our friendships first started as being enemies because those Kahoot and Blocket are super brutal. You have they're all strategy games.
Hmm.
The faster you click, the more points you get. So I also remember all of us hating each other for being on the opposite teams, and now we're just friends.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really fun to think back.
Yeah, I bet. But it sounds like Bridgeway has really gotten a hang of building those online communities, which can be very hard and
Yeah.
can be very weird if not done well, I think. So it sounds like they do it
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, we actually, the meetup only happens 3 times a week. This
Okay.
was back in middle school, and for high schoolers, it happens once a month,
Okay.
which kind of made us sad. So we started a meetup of our own. At the end of eighth grade, we started a meetup of our own called the Fun Friday Meetup.
I
Kind of
love that.
sounds lame to think about it now, but we kind of did the same thing. We just I started that meetup
Hmm.
because I felt like I really want uh, a lot of my friends to get to know each other. Like a few of my friends don't know a few of my other
Mm.
friends, so we could all just socialize and be like a community, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And I started that meetup, and it was really shocking how it started with uh 4 people or something, and then it started to grow and grow and grow, and I almost have 7 to 8 people. I stopped doing that now because we all have schools. A few of them has gone to a physical school now,
Mm.
and it has kind of made it harder to like host those meetups.
Yeah.
But it was really fun.
It sounds like fun. I want to be a part of these fun Friday meetups. Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
I love that. To end off, because we have been going for quite a while and I don't want to keep you too long, I always ask, what is your best piece of advice for other homeschooled students?
So the best advice I think would be just be patient and trust the process, because homeschooling can be a lot of work sometimes,
Mhm.
and it's kind of easy to be discouraged or feel like you're not meeting the expectations, because I felt like that a lot of times. So I would feel like I would feel like it's okay to take things at your own pace, and that it's okay to make mistakes.
Mhm.
So yeah, that would be my biggest advice. Most importantly, homeschooling is not about academics. It's also about being independent and being self-motivated and
Mhm.
responsible. It's also about developing skills that will serve you well in whatever path you pursue. So that would be my biggest advice.
It's perfect advice. I think it's something I need to hear more often, because I can be very sometimes hard on myself, especially if I'm not like hitting where I want to be hitting, doing the things I'm
Yeah.
reminded that just what you said, which I couldn't have said it better, what homeschooling is. There's so much more to it than just your academics. It's about
Yeah.
learning how to be self motivated, how to self educate yourself. Just so much to it, that we're also learning, and it's a lot. So, like,
Yeah,
it's
sometimes
okay.
it's a lot because you
Yeah.
don't just run in tight schedules that
Hmm.
already school gives you for.
Exactly.
You get to decide it for yourself. So sometimes that could be on the good side, but sometimes that could also end up on the bad side because you wouldn't be able to get a lot of work done if you don't run on tight schedules, because you have the option to do whatever you want. And that's okay. That's what homeschooling is about, to learn things at your own pace. And that's what I think homeschooling kind of makes you comfortable about. You don't just have to like be super, super hard on yourself for not getting something done the way you thought or you would want to do it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm making sense on that.
No, you are for sure. I think everyone is wired differently. Our brains are all different. So our way of learning
Yeah.
things is different too. And a mass education system just cannot take into account for every single individual student in the way that they learn best. Homeschooling can. So the more
Yeah.
we lean into that, the better our experience is and the more we're actually truly experiencing homeschooling, I think, which is exactly what you were
Yeah.
saying. Yeah.
Be super motivated and try to stay super positive throughout it.
Mm.
I know it's hard, but I mean, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah, yeah, I say that. My mom says that too all the time. She's like, if I can homeschool, anyone can homeschool. So, it's just everyone's success story is so powerful because it does remind us all that we're doing this hard thing together, but there people are
Yeah.
succeeding, and it's more than just success. It's I don't know. Well, I guess I don't know what more than success is. It's more than just surviving and getting through. That's what I was trying to say. It's actually success
Yeah.
in loving
Yeah.
education. Yeah,
If someone homeschooling community, if they like succeed, it's kind of like a proud moment for everyone in the community.
exactly. Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
we're all in this together.
yes, we are. And I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story because, like I said just now, and like we were talking about, it's so powerful to hear other people talk about their experience and the things we struggle with too, but also the things that we love and we're passionate about. I mean, the more we talk about homeschooling, the more we are going to break down these stereotypes and myths that surround what we do because it is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can't thank you enough.
It's super cool. I actually want to thank you for giving me this wonderful
Oh, yeah.
opportunity where I could share my side of homeschooling to
Yeah.
other homeschoolers who think that they're all alone
Mhm.
in this process. Trust me, you're not. We're all in this together, and
Mhm.
we will stay being in
Yeah.
this together because we have a unique perspective of the world. That's how I think homeschooling is. We have a very unique perspective of it.
Exactly. All right, so that is it for episode number 48. Big shout out to Sindhu for sharing her story on the podcast because, that takes a lot of courage, especially to share the challenges as well as the blessings that you're facing through homeschooling. But that does help us all remember we're not alone in this and that we all face challenges and we overcome them with such grace and courage. So I loved talking with Sindhu. I hope you enjoyed listening to our conversation as much as we enjoyed recording it. So I want to also mention that if you want to learn more about Bridgeway Academy, like I definitely did after listening to this interview, I have linked all the information about their program in the show notes so you can check it out, especially as we're coming up on a new school year. It's good to have more information on new resources. So I also wanted to mention another piece of news is the podcast was recently featured in an Epoch Times interview, and shout out for any of the new listeners that have found the podcast through the interview. I'm so glad that you're here and listening to this episode. But if you didn't hear about that, I have linked the article in the show notes as well, so you can read more about my story, the story of the podcast, and where we are going in the future, which is actually really exciting. And the second piece of news I wanted to mention here is the podcast is officially under a rebranding project. I've been working on it this whole month. It's going to launch July 26th. So the name is going to change. The podcast cover art is going to change. The mission and the content is pretty much going to stay the same, but I'm going to go into more detail over the next few weeks about what that change really means. But I think it's about time that we have an updated version of the podcast. I've been feeling like that is where we are being led. But I can officially say that next week is the last episode of How to Homeschool in High School. So it's bittersweet, but I'm also excited for what's to come. So as always, thank you guys so much for listening, and continue to be fearlessly different in choosing a different path for education. We'll see you all next week.